If you're a designer or an artist or some other type of creative person, I'm sure you've had that feeling where you're out in the world, you might be sitting in a cafe or on a train or just wandering around the city, and all of a sudden you'll see something or something ticks over in the back of your mind, or you just have this spark of creativity. And when you're there in that moment, if you don't capture that idea or write it down or sketch it out, that moment and that spark of creativity can be lost. Over the last few years, I've been experimenting with putting together an everyday carry for myself. Just basically a small bag of essential creative tools that I take with me pretty much everywhere I go. And I've been blown away by how much this has actually helped me to capture these thoughts and make the most of these moments and help me just to become more creative in general. So in this video, I just wanted to explain what I've got in my everyday carry, what I've actually over time ended up narrowing it down to and why, and talk about three key things that I think you should be thinking about if you're looking to put together something similar for yourself and how it can actually help you to become more creative. So chances are, if you've clicked on this video, you're a creative person and you've probably also been thinking about the idea of putting together some type of everyday carry for yourself. And I know everyone will have probably a different definition of what an everyday carry is depending upon what they're interested in. So for those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Ben and I've worked as an urban designer for close to 30 years now. So this obviously shapes the way that I see the world and what I'm interested in. But for me, my everyday carry is just a small bag of essential tools that I take with me basically anywhere that I go. And it just helps me to design and think and do creative things while I'm out of the studio and out and about in the world. And I've seen a lot of videos on everyday carries, but for me, it seems like a lot of those, if not most of those, are focused more on the particular items that they have in the brands and trying to convince you of why what they have is the thing that you should go out and buy. And I'm not interested in doing another one of those videos or selling you on anything that I have. For me, the particular items or the brands are not the important thing. What I want to talk about is the things that maybe you should think about potentially taking with you depending on your interests, and the link between how those things can help you to be more creative wherever you go. Now, I've tried out what feels like hundreds of different setups over the years and tweaked little things along the way, but what I'm going to do is explain what I've landed on now as my everyday creative setup and talk about it in terms of three key principles that I think would be useful for anyone who's looking to put together their own everyday carry. And that is minimal, organized, and creative. I think for a lot of people, when they think of the word minimalism, particularly in terms of design, the first thing that pops to mind is probably a particular style or aesthetic. But when I'm talking about the principle of minimalism in terms of an everyday carry, I'm talking more about only having the essentials, taking with you everything that you need, but nothing more. I guess the key point here is that your everyday carry has to have all the essentials, all the things that inspire you and make you feel more creative, and that give you the basic tools to allow you to do whatever it is that you enjoy doing. But in the same instance, it has to be practical. It has to be something that you can easily take with you, pick up and take with you wherever you go. Because if it isn't, you just won't end up carrying it. So in terms of an everyday carry, less is definitely more. So for me, I've narrowed my everyday carry just down to a few basic essential creative tools. Firstly, it's my camera. Photography is something that I've increasingly become interested in over the last couple of years, and it's something that really helps me to feel creative. I just find when I carry my camera with me, it makes me more aware of what's going on around me. And it's just a great way for my brain to get thinking and being more creative. For some people, they might be just as happy to take a picture on their phone, but I find that there's something special about framing the world through the viewfinder. And I also find the less I actually pull out my phone, the more creative and connected I feel with wherever I am and the people and places I'm seeing. I'm not saying that you need to go out and buy a camera, but I just wanted to explain that that's why, for me, it's an essential part of my everyday creative carry. The second thing that I carry is my notepad and pen, which I just use to capture my thoughts and sketch out ideas and journal whenever I have spare moments. I made a separate video on how carrying a notepad and journaling has helped me to be more creative, which I'll link to at the end of this video, but it's again something that's become an essential part of my creative process and has also helped me to break the habit of pulling out my phone whenever I have a spare moment. My glasses is another item that I always have to carry. The why is pretty self-explanatory, and I'd be a bit lost without them, but hopefully you'll be one of the lucky ones who don't need to carry those. And finally, there's my earphones and a few other bits and pieces like spare batteries and a filter for my camera. And that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. As I said, I think I've tried hundreds of different combinations of adding things in and taking them out and trying different bags, different setups. But I think that's actually an important part of the process, because that's the only way that you'll actually find out what works for you and for the things that you're interested in. But I also think you'll know when you've got the balance right, because you'll have all the essential things to allow you to do whatever it is that you enjoy doing, but you won't have so many things that you end up thinking, I can't be bothered, and leaving it behind. It'll just end up being something that you grab and take with you wherever you go, but you'll notice that it ends up improving your creative life. I know that organisation wouldn't be the first word that would pop to people's mind when they think about creativity, but for me, organisation, or more importantly, having the tools that I need on hand whenever a creative moment arises, is a really important part of my creative process. And whilst in the past I felt like I was always looking for my earphones or I couldn't find my notepad, just having that place now where I know that's where those things go and I always put them back, it almost sounds like a small and kind of almost trivial thing, but I can't tell you how much time and frustration that small thing has actually saved me. The other really important part of this system is that I have a bigger main studio bag, and that's just the bag that I carry all of the main things that I use in the studio, my laptop, my iPad, and all those other things. And my smaller everyday carry bag just slots within there. My wife makes fun of me and calls it my babushka bag setup, but for me, it's actually just been a game changer. I travel a lot, and it's just a great way for me to stay organised, to know kind of where everything goes and if something is missing. And it just means that I never, or almost never, end up leaving anything behind. And because of this, I no longer end up swapping things or shifting things between different bags depending on where I'm going and what I'm doing. I just have that little everyday carry which goes with me everywhere, and then I can slot it into the larger main studio bag and head off whenever I'm traveling or moving between home and the studio or wherever for work. And in the end, it just ends up making me feel more creative and organised and productive, because I always have the tools that I need wherever I go. And this last principle, creativity, loops back to what I was saying at the very beginning of the video. The first two principles, to have something that is minimal and practical and that helps you to be more organized, is great. But ultimately, if the everyday carry that you have doesn't help you to feel more creative more often, then it's kind of missing the point. You can't obviously have everything with you all the time, but in a way that constraint can actually be a good thing. It makes you think more about what you really do need. And funnily enough, by not being able to have everything and all the tools that you usually use in the studio, it can actually help you to tap into a different part of your creativity. As an example, I used to have a slightly different setup for my everyday carry, which was slightly larger. And that was essentially to allow me to be able to take my iPad with me wherever I went, because it's something that I use a lot to sort of sketch out ideas and just jot down notes and bits and pieces when I'm in the studio. So the thinking is that I wanted to have the iPad with me in case I was in a cafe or I had a spare moment or something, and I could just sketch and jot out those thoughts in the same way that I would within the studio, which makes a lot of sense because that's a really important part of my creative process. But what I ended up finding with that setup was just being that slight bit larger. It ended up being something that wasn't compact enough that I'd just grab and take with me anywhere that I was going. I found that I ended up leaving it at home or in the studio more often than not, and that ended up defeating the whole point. In the end, what I ended up doing was swapping out the iPad for that little notebook that I showed before. And I would use that to just sketch out ideas and jot down notes in the same way that I would with the iPad. But the big difference was that it let me have a smaller bag setup, and I found that it ended up being something that I ended up taking more places. But the other more interesting and even more valuable thing I ended up finding was that when I was using the notepad, it somehow allowed me to tap into a different part of my creative brain that was in many ways even better than when I was actually using the iPad in the first place. I ended up developing a whole new creative process based around the notepad and journaling, and found that in the end, it meant that my creative process when I was out of the studio was different and in many ways more valuable than it would have been if I had exactly the same tools as I do when I'm in the studio. So the everyday carry that I have now, where I basically have a camera and a notepad and a few other essential creative tools, is the perfect balance for me and my creativity. It gets me out seeing and thinking about the world around me. It gives me all the essential tools I need to capture my thoughts without heaps of distractions. And importantly, it also gives me a different creative process and taps into a different part of my creative brain than what I do typically within the studio. So I guess the key point of what I'm trying to say is if you're looking to put together some type of everyday carry for yourself, experiment with different ideas to try to find out what are the essential tools that you need to allow you to do whatever you do wherever you go. But in the same instance, also play around with things to try to allow you to tap into a different part of your creativity or creative brain than what you would typically do within your studio if you had all of your normal tools. What you might end up finding out is that it actually might allow you to develop a new little part of your creative process that you wouldn't otherwise have had and that you really start to enjoy. As I said at the start of the video, this really simple idea of having a small everyday carry that just allows me to take a few essential creative tools with me everywhere I go has really helped me to boost my creativity over the last few years. If it's something that you haven't tried yet for yourself, hopefully this video will inspire you to have a go. As I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to see that video that I put together about journaling and how that can help you with your own creative thinking and processes, I'll try to leave a link somewhere here. And if you'd like to see more of these types of videos, please subscribe, or you can go to the channel and you'll find more there. Thanks for watching, and I really do hope that this video has provided you with some ideas and inspiration and helps you in designing your own creative life.